You are tuned to the Just Don't Quit broadcast network.
This is Randall at JustDon'tQuit.com, and we're the only ones coming to you live from Sundance after the documentary I'm Pat Tillman. Welcome to part 2 of the audience Q&A. We are with director Amir Bar-Lev and Pat Tillman's mom and brother as they answer more questions deep into the night at Sundance.
In the red.
How's Kevin? I noticed in the credits that people were highlighted, but we didn't see Kevin. Is he doing well?
Okay.
I'll speak for Kevin, not for him, but I will answer your question. Kevin is doing fantastic. He's married, he's got a baby on the way, so everything is good in his world. As far as why you didn't see him on the video, our family's been burned by a lot of reporters and just all kinds of different media types of people, so he's pretty much has no trust whatsoever with anybody. And he trusts Amir, it was more, he just came at the wrong time. You know, we'd been burned by so many people, and Kevin just ultimately decided not to be a part of it. Amir's talked to Kevin, you know, they know each other, they have a good relationship, but Kevin just ultimately decided against it. So that's why he's not a part of the film.
Can you give us an example of how you were burned by the media?
There's been Sports Illustrated articles that have been totally inaccurate. There's been a book written that is covered with lies.
I can answer that.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I mean, I can say that, you know, because I think we when we set out, we collected pretty much every piece of mainstream media we could get our hands on. We have a huge archive of like every news story on the major networks and the cable networks about this from the beginning of Pat's enlistment and maybe even before to the present moment. And it's laughable at times, if it wasn't so tragic, how superficial the mainstream media's treatment of this story has been. Like, if you looked at the news the night after that Pete Guerin press conference when they scapegoat Kensinger, you just see how brilliant really the military is at playing the media that we have to live with these days, the type of journalism that it's, you know, calls itself journalism, because every news story on every network was basically saying, you know, the military comes clean, offers a heartfelt apology to the Tillmans. You know, it's like, if that's an apology, I mean, it's actually the opposite of an apology. They're basically saying we looked into it and we know it totally looks like a cover-up, but it wasn't a cover-up. It was this guy who happens to be retired actually didn't understand some minor detail of like the, you know, military regulations. And actually in one of the outtakes, Pete Guerin, the Army secretary, is like, basically he's like, I know it is hard to believe, but you got to believe us. There was never any attempt to cover it up. And he's like trying to offer a lie that he barely believes is going to work, and it works on all the major networks. So that's one of the places they've been burned. Yeah, and then right there.
Wonderful movie. I see the book by Krakauer is just come out, a full-length book. I wanted to see if you had a comment on that.
Well, we didn't really work with we didn't work with John Krakauer at all. We finished the film before he came out with his book, and so it it was basically like two parallel projects. Sorry?
Is this like one of the instances you're talking about misrepresentation by some sort of media?
I don't know.
That's one example, yeah.
Yeah.
I spoke to General Kensinger. I'd say, I'm sorry?
Just about basically like how.
Oh, I'm sorry. This gentleman wanted to know if we've been in touch with General Kensinger since all of this happened. He was the general who was used as a scapegoat, basically, by the military. And I've talked to him about 3 or 4 times. You know, he's very closed-mouthed. He's very, very gracious man. He's very, very polite. You know, they always call you ma'am, which starts to sound like an insult after a while. But you know, he's really a gracious man. He was, as he said, he joined the military at the age of 17. So it was, pounded in him that he is there to take orders and he doesn't question his orders, and he didn't. And he got burned. They thought he was just an easy target. He had retired. He was the head of Special Forces of the Rangers, and they laid it all at his feet. And I talked to Wesley Clark. It was a very weird meeting. But in the end, he told me that there is no way that this cover-up started at the 3-star level, that it had to have gone much higher than that. And after looking at all the documents, we are convinced of it. And the Congressional Committee, the first committee, deemed that there was indeed a cover-up in Pat's death, but they were never held accountable. So.
Well, I guess my question is that it doesn't appear to me that it's even a 4-star level cover-up, but it had to have come from somebody that are in charge.
Yeah, and that's what he meant. That's what he meant. It went beyond the military.
We're going to have one more question.
Okay. Yeah, up on the top there.
Said that the Democrats were incompetent, and that is not Henry Waxman's reputation. He's a very tough investigator, and I was embarrassed for him. He was so acquiescent and so pathetic. I'm curious what light you can shed on any conversations you would have had with his staffers about what really was going on, if they would share it with you back in his office.
Well, we were really angry after the second congressional hearing, and we went back there and we told the attorneys how upset we were, because we gave them every piece of evidence. My son Kevin and I were on the phone with them, the attorneys for Waxman's committee, for days. We had questions. Stan Goff, the gentleman you saw in the film, the ex-ranger, he contributed just, all kinds of information. It boiled down to that they just didn't do their homework. I mean, not the attorneys. The attorneys were frustrated too, because they prepped a lot of these congressmen, but they just didn't really pay attention. And then the other thing that was really opportune for them is that Rumsfeld refused to show up originally. He said he wasn't coming. And then at the last hour, he showed up, and it rattled everybody. You could just tell that everybody was terrified of this wormy man. And so, it's like, but I think that was, he did that deliberately. He threw everyone off by saying he wasn't going to be there, and then he showed up at the last minute.